Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, I'm Jelena, your local real estate advisor in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. Today's video is going to be a little bit different from all of my other videos. Last week, I posted on my social media allowing you guys to ask me any question you may have about moving here, investing here, or anything you would like to know about myself included. And in today's video, I'm going to be covering all of those questions that you've asked me. So keep watching if you'd like to learn more about all of that. So we're going to be starting with the questions now. The first one that I got, and this is the question I get all the time, is how did I get to the Dominican Republic? What made me move to the Dominican Republic? Now, the answer to this is a bit strange, but is definitely real, and it is the COVID pandemic. Essentially, when the COVID pandemic started, a couple of friends and I decided to leave Serbia, as I'm originally from Serbia, as it's a really bad period in Serbia. We couldn't leave our apartments from Friday to Monday at all. Then we decided essentially just to go work from home somewhere else. And we could not go anywhere because my passport, Serbian passport, was on the blacklist in pretty much every country in Europe. So then we basically went on Google. We Googled where can we go with our Serbian passports, and the Dominican Republic was the only open country for us. And this is how I got to discover this beautiful country. I came here, I absolutely fell in love with the place, and eventually ended up moving here permanently. The following one was, what are some things you love the most about living in the Dominican Republic? This is a fairly easy question that I also do get asked quite often. Definitely what I love the most is the weather, the beaches, and also the people. One of the very big differences that I had, one of the biggest cultural shocks I had when I moved here from Serbia, from Europe, was essentially that people here are very friendly. Anywhere, for example, when you walk down the street and you look at people, they smile at you, they say hi, good afternoon, which is something weird because in Europe, if you do that, they think you're a little crazy, which is definitely not the case in the Dominican Republic. So everybody's very friendly, they're always happy to see you, and that's really something I really love about the Dominican Republic overall. The next one I got was, what are some things you really don't like about the Dominican Republic? Something that I really don't like. Well, again, one of the most difficult things I had to adapt to was that people and services here sometimes are not as fast or not as swift as they are in Europe, for example, or in the US. You have to get used to waiting in lines. Sometimes, for example, if you go to the bank, one of the public governmental banks, you're not going to be helped very fast, so sometimes you got to wait for things to be done. And also, one very important thing when moving here, you need to know you have to be on top of people. For example, you hire any kind of service, you have to call them, you have to be on top of them, and that's something I was not used to myself, but I got adjusted to it. And now, because I know what to expect every time, I know to stay on top of people and, to keep calling them for absolutely anything I need done. And this is how you get things done in this country, essentially. You always have to have good context and you have to be on top of absolutely everybody you hire. And that's the only thing I really did not like initially. But again, once you adapt to it, you learn to overcome it and you learn to essentially cope with it. And guys, the next one on the list that we have is, how did you find your first apartment here and was it easy to find it? Again, as I mentioned, I first came here in COVID, so I wasn't initially planning to move here. I just came and I kind of explored the country when I first arrived. I initially stayed in hotels. Back in COVID, again, in that period, it was fairly easy to find lodging because everything was pretty much empty. Initially I stayed in hotels. They were also empty and I got amazing deals back then. And I got my first few lodgings on Airbnb after I did the hotels. So that was pretty easy. And then afterwards, I managed to find long-term rentals together with my partner, and we did it with a local real estate agent. It was very important for us to use a realtor back then as well, because again, as I explained in one of my previous videos, there's no MLS in the Dominican Republic, so it's not very easy to do that. The next one we have is, did you already know somebody in the DR before you moved there? Initially, when I came, I knew nobody. As I mentioned, I came with a couple of friends. That's why I had absolutely nobody in the DR. I did end up meeting my partner and my current husband here. And of course, that was one big reason as well why I decided to move here. But initially, I did very much fall in love with the country, and I ended up coming back here multiple times before I finally decided to move. The next one we have is, what's your daily routine now compared to your life before? Okay, this is an interesting one. Before I became a realtor here in the Dominican Republic, my original background is IT. So I graduated in IT. I was an IT professional. I used to work in programming before. It was a hard job as well. I used to be a lot, behind my computer. I didn't go out much. I didn't see the sun much at all. So that was very different back when I lived in Serbia, Europe. I still work very, very hard in the Dominican Republic. The big difference, however, when working here is that every weekend you have the beach, you have the sun, you can go out, socialize, something I did not used to do much before. So I would say that work-wise, it's still pretty rough, but I do get to disconnect much more than I used to before back home in Serbia. Now, this one is very interesting as well. I do hear this question a lot, and it says, is it hard to make friends or connections as a foreigner? Actually, it is not hard at all in the Dominican Republic. If you are outgoing as a person to begin with, I mean, I'm sure, you wouldn't have any trouble making friends at the DR. You do, of course, have to go out. You have to go to the beach clubs. You have to go to restaurants and bars where you can actually meet people. Of course, if you come here and you stay, within your four walls, you're not going to meet a lot of people for sure. But yes, it's fairly easy because, again, there's a lot of foreigners, there's a lot of expats, and everybody's pretty much looking to make friends just like you are. And also there's quite a few groups online on social media, on Facebook. There's multiple expat groups where you can actually find multiple gatherings that do, or bars, cafes, restaurants, and it's fairly easy to meet new people here. And the next question, I think, is probably one of the most common questions I ever get. It is, do you speak Spanish? The answer to this question is yes. Yo hablo español perfectamente, así que cualquier cosa que necesiten, yo siempre le puedo ayudar en español. Y hablo español dominicano on top of everything. So I am very, very fluent in Spanish. My whole channel is in English. This is why I kind of stick to that, because most of my audience is international. But if you do need me, to help you with finding anything in Spanish and just talking in Spanish, yo definitivamente le puedo ayudar con eso también. The next question we have is, what advice would you give to somebody thinking about moving to the Dominican Republic? I would definitely say, do your research, come with an open mind, and do not expect everything to be like it is back home in the US, Canada, or wherever it is you're coming from, because it's not supposed to be, right? It's a completely different environment. Some things are going to be better, some things are going to be worse, just like the one I mentioned, service in some areas. But again, you have the beach, you have the nature, you have so many things you do not have back home. So we should definitely learn to appreciate everything we have here and kind of learn to overcome the differences. The next question is something I also see online very, very often, and it is it safe to live in Punta Cana? Now, I've lived in many places, and I've lived in Punta Cana for 5 years now, and I can tell you that this is the safest place I've ever lived in. Before I moved to Cap Cana, I lived in Punta Cana Village, which is, part of the Punta Cana Resort. And both the Punta Cana Resort and Cap Cana areas are the safest places you can possibly live in. Here, it is so safe. I can leave my golf cart on and just walk away and, not have to worry that anybody's going to touch it. So it's very, very safe in these two communities. Overall, in Punta Cana as well. Of course, there's gated communities are always going to be safer than the non-gated ones. But even in, the popular touristic areas of Bávaro, you're very, very safe. So I would definitely say yes, it's very safe to live in Punta Cana. Now, the next one we have is, how did you get into real estate here in Punta Cana? Well, again, back when I first came here, of course, I saw this immense beauty. I saw the immense potential for development that was just starting back then in 2020. And I also noticed that there's a huge lack of professionalism when it comes to real estate, because I started inquiring about things myself and I saw how they were handling my inquiries. And I said to myself, there's so much potential for this to be better, right? So this is kind of why I decided to kind of make the switch. Plus, in my previous job in IT, I could never really talk to people much, and I could never use the languages that I speak, which I speak 5 languages, and in IT, you can't really speak many more languages than IT itself, right? So that's kind of also what motivated me to open up myself up to new opportunities and to switch completely to a new industry. The next question we have is it possible to invest in property as a foreigner? The answer to this one is simple. It's yes, 100%. It is definitely possible. Unlike some neighboring islands, we have no restrictions when you want to invest as a foreigner. I'm a foreigner myself. I do not have Dominican citizenship, and I have invested in property here myself. So when you invest in property here, you own it 100%. So it's not like you own it for a certain period of years and then the government owns it. No, your property is yours. You get the title with your name and everything on it. So yes, 100% you can invest and there's no restrictions on that. The next one we have is, what is the biggest mistake people make when buying property in the Dominican Republic? I would definitely say trusting the wrong person. And this is something, unfortunately, that I see pretty much every day here. One of the big reasons for this, I would say, is because there's no licensing in this country. So absolutely anybody can be an agent. I even had clients who showed me their Uber drivers cards, and one side was, well, Uber driver and the other one was real estate agent. So unfortunately, you have to do your due diligence. You have to see who you're putting your trust into. You can't just trust absolutely anybody on the internet, saying they're an experienced real estate agent. So you really have to do your due diligence and decide who you're going to put your trust in. And that, of course, is just one of the many mistakes people make when investing here. The other one, the second biggest one, would definitely be not doing your due diligence, not getting the local attorney who's going to help you go through everything when buying a property. I have a lot of clients, telling me that they're scared to invest because they saw a lot of scams. Yes, there's a lot of scams everywhere in the country, of course. You just have to do your due diligence, right? If you see a property that says $30,000 beachfront 2-bedroom property, well, there's something shady about that, because it's, when something is too good to be true, it most definitely is. The next one we have is, what are your future plans, and do you see yourself staying in the Dominican Republic long term? Definitely yes. I do see myself staying here long term. I've built a life here. I built a business here. I absolutely love this country and everything, all the opportunities it has offered me. And I definitely love where I live, which is Cap Cana, because there's so much potential in Cap Cana. Just this area itself, the land that belongs to Cap Cana has 30,000 acres of space, and that is room for so much development you cannot even imagine. The next one is a very interesting question as well, and it is it actually safe to drive in the Dominican Republic? Generally, yes, it highly depends on the area you really live in. Punta Cana, I would say, is much easier to drive in compared to Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo, I hate driving in. I do not willingly go there and drive there myself because the traffic is just crazy and there's a lot of bikes coming at you from everywhere, and it's not really the easiest place to drive. Definitely you can do it if you're safe, just like anywhere, but Santo Domingo is not really the nicest place to drive in, I would say. Punta Cana is easier, however, it is getting more crowded, so it can get a bit tricky here as well. However, communities such as Cap Cana, Punta Cana, all that area around the airport is fairly easy to drive in because it's not as crazy at all. Also in Cap Cana, you cannot have a bike queue. Bikes are prohibited here completely, which of course, makes the whole danger of it kind of go away, because bikes are where most accidents happen in the DR. The next question we have is, do you feel safe walking around alone in the evenings? In my area, of course, 100% in Cap Cana. I could not say that for absolutely every neighborhood in the country. There are some neighborhoods you should definitely avoid, especially in Santo Domingo, the capital. But here, I definitely feel very safe in Cap Cana. I've walked alone in Bavaro, in other areas as well, and I felt pretty safe too. So definitely, as anywhere in the world, there are some areas you should avoid, and somewhere, all the touristic areas are very safe in Punta Cana. The following question we have is, what is the cost of living like, and is it really cheaper than Europe or the US? This really depends. In some cases, it is cheaper. For example, we have services and housing, and maids, housekeeper. That is much cheaper compared to the US or Europe. However, imported goods, right? Imported products, furniture, everything that's imported is more expensive than it is in Europe and US. So it highly depends as well on your lifestyle. I would say prices in restaurants can be cheaper in some areas. In the more luxurious areas, it can be more or less on par with the US, again, depending where in the US, because the US is huge as well. But it is not that much cheaper, really. It highly depends on your lifestyle itself. Also, I wanted to add that on my channel, I actually did a complete tour of the Nacional supermarket in Punta Cana, which is one of the biggest supermarket chains in the country. It is also one of the top let's say, premium supermarkets here, so you have the best quality of items there, but it is also one of the more expensive ones. So in that video, you can actually check all the prices and compare them more or less to wherever you're coming from, and you can get an idea of the pricing itself. The next question is very important as well, and I see it asked quite a bit, and this is one of the main concerns for people moving here. And the question is, how is the healthcare here? And would you go to a private clinic or a public one? In general, healthcare here is good. Generally speaking, it is good. You do have to get a local insurance or one that covers both local and international. Before, I used to have the premium version of the local insurance, and I used to pay about, I think, $150 a month, and it was the premium coverage with 0 deductibles anywhere I went. Now this was very good for me as well. As of recently, I switched to another insurance that covers both local and international, such as Cleveland Clinic, all the major centers in the US. God forbid, I'd like to have everything included because I had nothing in the US myself. However, the healthcare here is really good. There are a couple of good hospitals in Punta Cana. The best one, in my opinion, is Centro Médico Punta Cana, Medical Center Punta Cana. And there's a couple of private clinics that are really good as well. However, for anything major that happens to you, I would definitely recommend going to certain doctors and certain clinics in Santo Domingo, most of which will be covered by your local insurance as well. In comparison, for example, to US and Canadian healthcare, here you do not have to wait very long to get an appointment. The appointments are very, very quick. That's something I noticed when talking to my clients, and sometimes in Canada you have to wait a very long time to get an appointment with your doctor. Here you do not. So that is fairly quick as long as you have the right recommendations of where to go to. You can have really good service, and I had myself really amazing experience here with doctors. And of course, this goes without saying that healthcare here is much cheaper compared to the US. I think that can be unfortunately said of pretty much anywhere in the world. Just to give you an idea, again, it really depends where you go. But for example, let's say your son or daughter wants to do their braces. Here in one really good dental's office in Santo Domingo, you can get your braces done for $1,500, the full treatment with everything included. Whereas in the US, I know that goes to thousands and thousands of dollars. So there's a big difference in pricing overall, but the quality is really good. The next question is, what do you do if you get sick, and is there good medical support? Yes, there's good medical support, and most doctors actually speak very good English, which is really good. And we do have 24/7 emergency centers. Even, for example, close to Cap Cana, 10 minutes from Cap Cana, you have Punta Cana Doctors, which is a smaller clinic, but they do have 24/7 emergency, so you can always go there. And for anything major, if there's something more important, more serious, you would get transferred to Centro Médico Punta Cana or any major hospital here, or of course to Santo Domingo as well. Just to give you guys an idea of how quickly we get things done, anything that's medical and related to that. For example, a couple of weeks ago, I had injured my shoulder. I had a rotator cuff injury, and I needed to get it, examined by a doctor. The same day I went to the emergency center, I got an appointment with my doctor. I got it examined right away. I got all the prescriptions. I got an indication to do blood work, which I went and I did the morning after, and I got my results within 48 hours. So everything was very fast, and I didn't have to wait at all. So whenever you have any kind of emergency, or you just want to do a blood work, we have labs that do it all the time, and results are very fast here. The following one is, do you ever miss anything from your home country? Of course I do. I miss my family the most. I miss some of my friends, food, of course, everything I grew up with. However, I do go back once a year. I'm lucky enough to have the Punta Cana airport, which is an international airport, very well connected, so it's fairly easy to go back to Europe. And the airport keeps expanding every year, so now we have more flights than ever, to the US, Canada, Europe, so it's very well connected. So, if you want to go back home at any point, you definitely can. It's very easy. The next one we have is, how is the food in the Dominican Republic? Do you cook at home or eat out most of the time? I definitely would say that I do a bit of both. Dominican food, I would say it's pretty healthy. There's a lot of rice, beans, not overly processed, so a lot of avocado as well. What I love the most about this country and its food is the organic avocado, mango, dragon fruit. So all of that I eat quite a bit of. I eat it out in restaurants a lot as well because I work a lot, so it's just it's more convenient sometimes to have lunch outside. But I do like to cook at home any chance that I get, and I get all of my supplies, of course, in the national supermarket and in cash and carry in Cap Cana, where they have really good steak and fish and all the healthy and fresh products. The next question we have is, what is the local mentality like, and are people friendly? I think I answered this in one of the previous questions, and yes, they're very very friendly to foreigners as well. The mentality is very relaxed sometimes, which is what I referenced to in one of my previous questions as well. Sometimes they can be a bit slow and leave everything for tomorrow, which is not what we are used to in Europe or in the US. But yeah, eventually they do get to it, and in general, they're very friendly people. The next one we have is, how do you handle things like paying bills, banking, or legal stuff, and is it complicated? I handle it very easily. Surprisingly, you can do a lot of things online. In the Dominican Republic, it is getting much more modernized than it used to be. So, for example, you can pay the majority, I think, all of your bills online, legal stuff as well. Again, if you have a good contact, you're pretty much settled. And anything that you need to do, you can do with a credit card online. So it's fairly easy. Cash is not that necessary anymore here. So anything can be done with a credit card and online as well. So that is really nice. And that's something that I enjoyed seeing this country transform into. Because when I first came 5 years ago, it was still kind of on the verge. But now we have definitely advanced, and most things are done online. The next one is, what do you do for fun on weekends or when you're not working? There is so much to do here. Of course, my favorite thing to do is go to the beach. Even to this day, it really never gets tiring. But there's so much more. For example, we are now in Semana Santa, the Holy Week, so there's a ton of activities. We even have the PGA golf tour in Punta Cana Resort. We just had the ATP tour in Cap Cana a few weeks back. There's a lot of paddle, tennis, all sorts of activities that you can imagine. They do a lot of events, concerts, even some parties that are hosted in El Dorado and Eden Rock. So there's always something to do. You just have to know the dates and pretty much work around that. But there's a lot of things to do always. The next one we have is, what are the legal requirements for foreigners to buy property in the Dominican Republic? So whenever you want to buy property in the Dominican Republic, you will have to provide 2 IDs. So it's very important you provide your passport and, for example, your driver's license. You will very likely be asked to provide your tax returns, your bank statements, because the Dominican Republic has very strict money laundering law. And some clients sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable, providing all this information, but it's just the law here. So you have to provide it so the country makes sure that all the money you've made has been made legally. Of course, besides this, you will need to fill out the KYC form, and in general, just work with your attorney through the rest of the steps. But as far as the documents on your end, it's mostly these. The next one is, are the property titles clean and properly registered with the Dominican government? This is a very important question, and the answer is that not all titles are created equal. Not all of them are clean. This is exactly the reason why you need to have an attorney who is going to check on the title for you. For example, when buying a pre-construction property, you're not going to get the title right away because it's just not out, right? When a project is being constructed, there's something called a mother title, which is essentially the title of the entire land where the project is being built on. And that is the title that can be provided to you and to your attorney, so they can check on that title. As far as the title of the particular apartment you're buying, it is not out at that point. Normally, it is out after the project is completed, and because there's such a huge demand in the department, the governmental department which is called the Registro de Títulos, Registry of Titles, it takes some time to get out. So, for example, once the project is completed, it's really hard to give you a time frame. Normally, within 60 days to a couple of months is how long you would wait nowadays to get your title once the project is fully completed. The next question we have is, what are the HOA fees for Cap Cana and what do they include? So wherever you buy in Cap Cana, you have essentially two HOA fees. One would be, for example, of the condominium complex you live within, or the area where you own the house within in Cap Cana. And the other one would be something called APROCAP. APROCAP is an abbreviation which stands for Asociación de Propietarios de Cap Cana, or in English, Cap Cana's Owners Association fees. And essentially, those are the fees that Cap Cana charges to maintain the entire community and to keep it looking as pristine as it does. I'm going to read for you guys more or less just to understand what it actually includes. The APROCAP includes 24-hour security, medical service, fire department, gardening service, maintenance of common green areas, irrigation water service, beach maintenance, beach cleaning, road maintenance, fumigation service, customer service, front desk service. So all of that is covered with APROCAP, which equals to about $32.4 per bedroom per month. The following question is, are there any restrictions on foreigners renting out their property, both short or long term? There are no restrictions of that kind in most cases. For example, in Cap Cana, there are no restrictions like that in most projects. There's only one new construction project that is now introducing this kind of restriction where they're not going to be allowing short-term rentals. But that is something that's been disclosed since the very launch of that project here in Cap Cana. All the other ones here do allow you to do both short and long-term rentals without any limitation. So guys, that was it for today's video. I definitely hope you found this helpful and that this video answers a lot of the questions that you may have had about moving to the DR or investing in the DR itself. If you have any additional question or something else you would really like to know about the DR, make sure to leave them in the comment section and I'll be definitely including that in the next video that I do of this kind. As always, thank you so much for watching. It's a pleasure to have you on my channel. If you would like me as well to keep making these videos, make sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And as always, thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a great rest of the week. Bye.